son of a... You gotta be fucking kidding.
The practical effects with the hands-on and actually building it, touching it, filming it, seeing it when it was done, really felt like I recreated something, and it gave me a sense like I actually did something, actually made something. It's like building a house. You know, if someone builds a house, you go, I built that, you know, and it's there for a long time, you know. So with practical effects, it's made me realize that, you know, once we're actually making these things and bringing them to set and shooting them, I feel like we actually are creating something that's going to last.
Don't you know anything about Fantasia? It's the world of human fantasy.
So how I got started was pure luck. I wanted to be a cartoonist since I was like 6 years old. And my high school art teacher had told me that there was an animator moving to the area. And little did I know at the time that it was going to be Robert Kurtzman of K&B Effects. And so I showed him my portfolio, totally geeked out like any 16-year-old kid would. And he offered me an internship at the time, we were called Precinct 13.
It really kind of started when I was quite young. It was Saturday afternoon TV, be watching all the creature features on television, King Kong, Godzilla, and Ray Harryhausen was kind of one of my heroes. Early on, watching the Sinbad movies and all the early stop motion stuff. That was really kind of the start where I started looking at the movies and going, there's art going on there along with all the, you know, the production, design, the acting and everything. And it kind of drove my artistic abilities. I was always drawing cartoons and sketching and painting. And for the longest time I thought, animation is where I'll go, because I always loved to draw. And but I couldn't sit at a drawing board all day. I could sit for an hour or two, but then I had to get up. So I'm like, maybe I want to go on a movie set. That might be a little bit better.
I think around 13 or 14, I discovered like Fangoria magazine. By going through the classified section in the back of that magazine, I found like ads for latex and different types of materials. You know, you just kind of pick up little tips here and there. But yeah, after that I was accepted to CCAD, and at CCAD I was hired by a company called the Scare Factory, who also makes this type of product. And I was there for 6 years and left and went out on my own in 2003.
Oh, purely by accident. I turned up at Pinewood Studios just to have a look round, find my brother-in-law, have a chat. I ended up meeting Harry Lang. They were doing a commercial in there. He liked the way I looked at things and the way we talked. He introduced me to a guy called Dave Jordan, who's a prop master on Alien, who took me on as one of the prop makers. He sent me over to EMI to speak to Frank Bruton, who was the prop master on Empire Strikes Back. He said, I think we need to make you a supervisor and get you in charge of these things. That's what I did, and the rest just followed on.
Well, there's something you don't see every day.
Tried to think of the most harmless thing. Something I loved from my childhood. Something that could never, ever possibly destroy us. Mr. Stay Puft.
Nice thinking, Ray.
So I think my favorite and most fascinating part about special effects and the monster making industry is probably that everybody is a huge nerd with you. Everyone that you work with grew up obsessing over horror films. We all went to conventions. We all, you know, like I watched Big Chuck and Little John as a little kid, and, you know, we would go to movies together. You'd hear all the gritty stories of, like, you know, who makes the best blood and just stuff like that. So you're surrounded in this community of just, like, horror nerds.
I guess what really initially blew my mind about this stuff was, you know, I mentioned I had seen like the movie Star Wars, you know, and as a kid, and when I found out that these creatures were things that people made, it just fascinated me. And also the idea that there was more detail in these things. Like if you took R2D2 or one of the Cantina creatures out of the movie, if you were actually able to see the real thing, you could turn it around and look at the back of its head and underneath of it. And there's so much more there, than what you could actually see on the movie. It's like this thing actually really existed.
I love practical effects for basically the hands-on thing, but also during film production. It's like for the obvious reasons for the actors to interact with it. And having something there rather than nothing is like always the best thing to do when you have actors. They can look at the green screen wall and kind of imagine the monster. But actually having something there made out of rubber that's mechanical that you can move around really, really I've found has always helped me with the movies and the stuff that I've done. And I think it's like a necessary thing. You start with that and then you augment it with CG and you go further beyond. And you can always alter it too. If you don't have an eye blink in the monster, you could put that eye blink in. But to have that rubber monster there doing something on set just kind of jazzes everybody up and makes it a little more real.
I feel I was pretty lucky when I got into makeup because I started interning at a decently large production company, so I think I got my feet off the ground a lot faster than most people in effects. But I would say that the most challenging thing would be getting started, kind of getting credits and getting your portfolio built up and just finding somebody who will take a chance on you.
There's the kind of thing where a mask gets torn and suddenly it's like all eyes are on you while you gotta glue it back together again, and at the moment in front of everybody. Just everybody turn around, look that way. That sort of thing.
These days it's definitely competing with CGI, I think, for the film industry. This company, Unit 70, we make stuff mainly for the theme park and haunted house industry, and I kind of feel like that's sort of the future, for practical effects. Like that's, at least for the time being, until they perfect holograms or some other type of technology we can't imagine. I think that's really where most of this work is being done.
Time management is it's like the blessing and the curse. If when you have all the time in the world, you get lazy, because it's always going to be great. Won't it be so great when we actually get there and do that? And your mind just lets you daydream and how cool things are going to be when you have all the time in the world, because you don't have to do it. But what's the most important is that having that deadline and the time management thing is now you've got a certain amount of time. And it makes you focus in. And it's like probably the most important thing for a filmmaker. Everybody I know that makes movies, we sit around and have a drink and just imagine all these cool movies and make all these plans. But the reality is it's a commercial art form. Movies are made in the studio system, and even independent movies, they're made as it's commercial art. And so in order to be commercial, it has to be done for a certain amount of money, a certain amount of time. It has to hit the audience. So that is probably one of your most important things as a filmmaker, being artistic, but then actually putting it in the box and saying, how do I deliver that art? It's the same with like a painter. A painter can paint a painting and they can work on one painting for a year. But if they don't sell that painting for $100,000, they're going to starve. So can you do it in a week? Can you do it in a month? So time management's really, really important every step of the movie making process.
For me, I typically would focus only on one film at a time, especially since my career evolved more around makeup application and being on set. But when I worked at the shop, we would kind of juggle a few projects, but normally it was Bob Kurtzman who would kind of decide, what you worked on. So he would kind of, you're working in molds today, this or that.
Well, really, we serve the client, so it's predominantly what the clients need. We try, like when we our first kind of discussing projects with clients, time and the deadline is like the most important thing, in budget of course, but we kind of just are very clear with our clients on the onset, to determine like when they need things. So really it's just our client schedule kind of determines how we prioritize. But it is very difficult. That's a very important part of this process, is planning things and making sure that the products are done in the correct order.
So unfortunately, the best way to learn things is from doing them and making those mistakes. I think early in my career, I would say I could do things maybe I necessarily couldn't. Thank God I was able to kind of make it work. But as I got a little bit more seasoned in makeup, I realized that it's okay to say no to certain jobs, or it's okay to pass things on to somebody you know can do it better than you can, or maybe offer to assist them on that job. I think there were times where I would get on set and maybe my prosthetic wasn't holding up as well as it should have, and I later learned it was because I wasn't using the right kind of glue. Because when I got into makeup, I really was kind of thrown in there. It was just like, a makeup artist here, go to set and work on this B movie. And so it was a lot of like learning on the fly. But another difficult challenge was, say I worked on a really cold set, like we worked in a winter movie, I didn't know my materials would freeze. So things like that were really difficult.
When you run into a problem on a set or with your production, how are you going to get out of it? What's the best way out? What's the fastest thing you can do? How do you salvage problems? And I've only really learned all those things from making all of those problems, making all of those mistakes. And so it's really probably the biggest thing has been, when I finish a movie, I look at the movie and I see all the problems. And for instance, like, okay, why did I shoot it that way? That's the information's too convoluted there. That shot's too long. So probably one of the biggest things I've learned from my mistakes is to do the prep, really concentrate on the prep, plan out what I'm going to do, make a decision, and then stick with it. You got many opportunities to change down the line. Then the problem is when you get to the end, and if it doesn't work, you don't know where you made the mistake. So the biggest thing I've learned is make a decision, make a plan, stick with it. If there's a problem, you fix it along the way. But you've got to go with your original idea. Your original idea is always going to be the best.
What have I learned? Be more careful next time. All your mistakes are a good thing. Everything's an experience, so you learn from everything. You even learn from when it goes right. There's no great formula. You just do what you do, and it either works or it doesn't.
Outside the containment area.
You want to stay away from that guy. He's grouchy.
I actually think it's going to go back to my very first movie, Mosquito. The challenge of it was I had to make a giant mosquito. And I had started out with the project with making a mosquito that was only about, the size of a football. And initially I was thinking, okay, that'll be great. Something that big will be terrifying. But the problem came, my God, I had no budget, no money. If I only have one mosquito flying around, it's not terrifying. I need hundreds to make it scary. So I went, I don't have the budget. So what it did was it forced me to make the mosquito bigger. And then what I discovered along the way was by making the mosquito bigger, I could get away with 2 or 3 and it would be terrifying. Also, I could mechanize something that was a little bit bigger, a lot easier.
Creating the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man was one. That was a challenge.
1, 2, 3, go!
Well, let's see. We started a couple of little maquettes in clay just to get an idea of what they were looking for, and then we were trying to figure out just how we wanted to approach how to get a seamless marshmallow.
What is light without dark? What are you without me? I am a part of you all.
Well, I believe they have just a presence that CGI just doesn't have. They have a weight and a movement that at the current time is difficult for CGI to kind of duplicate. And I think it's just nice for the actors to be able to have something to actually react to and interact with. I feel like when they're pretending to react to something that isn't there, it just shows in the finished film.
Anytime I see, say, like a neck slit that's been done with CG blood, totally can tell right away. I mean, I'm sure you can too. You're like, that's not blood. There's like no gravity to it, So I think that there will always be a use for practical effects. And I think right now we're just really excited at these advances we've made in digital effects and CG. But I think that they'll still always want to use special effects and gags, no matter what. And then there's trauma movies. Trauma movies are always going to use crazy, practical effects, and that's part of their charm.
It's not to say digital effects are similar in that you're creating something that's going to last a long time, but you physically can't hold it in your hand. You can't touch it. And when you can hold something and touch it and feel it and see it and walk around it and it's there, for me, it's given me a real sense that we're actually creating something that's lasting. Even though it's going to be on film, the sense is that we've built it. It really did exist. It's there, and we captured it on film. So it's made me want to keep doing practical effects and mixing them in with digital effects. My favorite digital effects work is the stuff you don't know is digital effects.
I think they play a very relevant role. If you're an actor, if you can actually see something or pick it up, then you can act with it. You haven't got to imagine what it is. So that makes the actor's life a lot easier for them. They can actually see the piece and use it, therefore make it a better film. CGI has got its place and it's very, very good, but I wouldn't be able to do it.